I was in the Marine Corps. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps out of the ROTC program at Holy Cross. And I played football at Holy Cross as well, and a number of other things. And people start thinking, oh, this guy must be able to walk on water or walk through walls or whatever. And as we all know, it ain't true. And if they tell you it is, they're lying. But going through the ROTC and Marine Corps training program was quite a bit different, as far as I can tell, from what my peers who were in the Army and other branches of the armed forces were involved in. The Marine thing, when I got siphoned into, but it was one, very interesting. Two, the people that they sent out to be ROTC instructors at different schools, you know, including all the ones running around Harvard and, you know, or whatever, and they were doing their thing, and we would end up running into one another during the summers, because your summer vacation will be, and all of a sudden you say, where's this place called Quantico? And you know, the answer is it's south of Washington, D.C., and they put you through an awful lot of stress and whatever, because their whole object is to have you spend 3 summers going crazy thinking, why in the name of God am I here? But the other side of the coin is that you come out of it thinking, well, all right, now maybe I am as cool as I think I am, which is not true either. But it's what happened. And when you come out toward the end, it turned out that I was suitable for flying. And I ended up doing, in the Marine Corps, if you start out as a guy cleaning, you know, washrooms and things like that, ultimately you're going to get stepped along, and eventually you're going to spend time with all these other people in a place called Quantico, Virginia, which is a place where they love to put you through hell on earth. And the idea is that if you got out of it, then you can be very proud and boast and whatever, but not really. But I went through that and came out the other end, and I had cleared for flying to become a pilot. And so I thought that was kind of fun too, because I was able to fly airplanes out of an one of these civilian aviation. It happened to be at the Worcester Airport. And so, you know, I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and I began to get kind of full of myself. But fortunately, I had Eileen, who I was dating at the time, and she was telling me I was not nearly as cool as I thought I was. And so,
could I inject something
Sure.
which hasn't been talked about? There was a draft.
That's
the
true.
world was entirely different.
That's true.
And every young man faced a crossroads.
Yeah.
And you either waited to be drafted or you raised your hand. You took another option. You took an ROTC scholarship,
Yeah.
which he's also from New Jersey.
Oh,
And
yeah.
his came from a family that wasn't going to afford to send him away to college. So he was looking for money.
Yeah.
And the Navy said, we'll pay everything.
That's right.
And you want to fly? We'll even pay you to go up to the Worcester Airport. I grew up thinking every airport had to be on the top of the mountain. And he got his private pilot's license, and then went Marine Corps. So I just wanted to inject
Sure.
that, because it formed my young life and my peers, and then it was gone.
Yeah,
New stage.
yeah, that's true.
Right,
But
probably
in any event, I got the other end of it. You know, I had to go to Quantico again and qualify to be an infantry officer. And that was kind of a fundamental base skill. And then beyond that, if they'd send people off who would be doing other things, and I did end up flying. And I flew an airplane called the Phantom, which in its day was the hottest thing around. The Air Force, the Navy, and the Marine Corps were all flying it. And so I got to fly the Phantom, and then was assigned to a squadron based for the moment out in El Toro in California. And we worked our way up and did all our training. And then in the meantime, Eileen and I got married, and as did a number of our peers and all that sort of thing. But then the time came when we all had to go to work. And so we left our spouses behind, and we're on our way to Southeast Asia. So it turned out. And we got there, and the planes, they said, were at that time the state of the art. So there were a lot of other planes that were more obsolescent. And when we showed up, those guys kind of went back and retrained so they could fly the plane that we flew. And in the meantime, we were out doing mostly close air support. And we were doing it for, any customer who came along, as long as they weren't North Vietnamese people. And we were on all these missions, going here, there, and everywhere. And also, unbeknownst to a lot of people for a long time, although you probably know it by now, was the fact that we were in Laos, bombing the bejesus out of various and sundry people who were filtering down from North Vietnam into, through, Laos, and then coming in supposedly behind the our people, and going to take them from the backside and all that kind of stuff. So our job then was to fly and basically prevent them from doing that. And it was pretty rugged stuff. And then what happened at one point, they had so many people streaming down through Laos that they needed people who were forward air controllers, or could be forward air controllers, and that meant you'd flown a lot yourself and you could talk people through what needed to be talked through. But it really stunk. I mean, we had an Australian army backing us up in Laos. I mean, hands up anybody who knew that. And we were doing that, and I ended up on the ground with the Australians and with our Vietnamese, South Vietnamese types, who actually proved to be pretty good people and knew what they were doing. And we did that for a while, but it got kind of old. And in the meantime, unbeknownst to most people who were probably in this room, the Japanese had an Air Force that was very diligent. They cared a whole heck of a lot, but their airplanes themselves were not state of the art. So what they started doing was pulling American, and mostly it was U.S. Air Force and Marines, back into Vietnam, and then we were going up. They had this thing set up in northern Japan, the Japanese built, and it was a hangar, like the likes of which I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. It was an enormous building, and they had one runway that pointed north. And in the midst of all this, the North Koreans and the Russians were basically using it to harass the Japanese in the thought that they might not let the Americans base their airplanes in Japan. And so my reward for getting through the time in Vietnam, and especially in Laos then later on, was I came back and they said, "Hey, welcome back." And I said, "Where's the squadron?" And they said, "Well, they're in some place in northern Japan." And I said, "No kidding, what are they doing up there?" He said, "You won't believe me when I tell you what they're doing." And in fact, I went back, and the good part was that we were based south of Hiroshima, of all people, of all places. And so we rotated people up north, and we were up there dogfighting with the North Koreans and with the Russians. And then we'd rotate back. The only good part about it was we were allowed to bring our wives over. And so we were living in town, and there was a time when we were 360 yen to the dollar. And we thought, well, this isn't bad. If only you didn't have to fly, that would be great, Well, we did that, and it was tough, because nobody really gave a damn or even knew we were there, and knew what we were doing. And we rotated back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And then finally we were relieved by some other squadrons that came along. I don't know what the point of all this is, other than to say that a lot of it was opaque to the world at large. You just didn't know what the hell was going on. And you'd be up there and, you'd run into some Russians or, some North Koreans. And they wanted, sometimes to fight, sometimes not to fight. But here we are, everybody's talking about Vietnam and everything else. Meanwhile, we're sweating blood up in northern Japan, screwing around with the, other guys. And it just wasn't the vision that, we had been sort of educated to expect. But ultimately, we did prevail. The other guys went back to, North Korea and Russia and all that kind of stuff. And then happily, we rotated back. I mean, here's the good part, really good part, is that after that, they rotated us back to Hawaii. And we were there with our spouses and families and everything else. And once in a while, we had reason to go back over toward, the the Russians and the North Koreans, but you know, it was a lot safer and a lot easier. That's probably what I should have said, but anyway, that's how I spent my summer vacation.